Hey everyone, thanks for hanging out with us today. Yeah, like John said, I'm going to be this is I think one of many Webex Contact Center webinars that we'll be doing over the next couple of weeks and months as questions and features are released. So this one's kind of an important one, or it's one that a lot of new users are going to see. You see on my screen here, this is my local lab. I'm running a very early build. This is not the GA build. This is actually, it's still showing 25.6. The GA release will show 25.8 when it's out. So this is kind of, I don't even know if this build ever made it to QA. But it's gonna get the job done today. So if there's any like oopses or anything like that, it's because of the early build. But when you're getting kind of settled in and used to or exploring the Webex Contact Center data, you're gonna see different types of statistics. And really it's kind of summed up in this little widget that I have right here, where we have a contact count of 103 calls, and we have an event count of 1,052 records. And the idea is, well, what does this mean? What's a contact and what's an event? And so if I edit my widget, you'll see my search set. I'm just looking for anything with a customer number. So there's nothing fancy in the back end, and people will ask, what do these mean? How many calls were there? And the brilliance and some of the messiness of Webex Contact Center data is that, well, there's a lot of it. And so Webex gives us, when a call is placed into a contact center, Webex gives us kind of two levels of statistics. There is the like the session records, which so every time a person calls in, there is a we're calling a contact record. That is, think of it as you're calling into a call center. From the moment you reach the call center to the moment you hang up the phone, that is a contact. That is one contact you called in once. Once the call is in the call center, every little stop as you go through the flow, if you're not familiar with flow, it's kind of like the script in CCX, as you're queued, IVR, which is out of order, IVR, then queue, as it's ringing, connected, on hold, all of that, each one of those little steps generates an event. So if you think of it like call manager data or Webex, not just go stick with call manager data, a contact is the sequence and the events are the individual legs. And the reason why there's such a big difference is where we get a lot of events. And so I can show you on the reporting side. I have a couple of sample records I can pick on. My first one is, let me grab this. So with and there will be like cradle to grave reporting, everything else on the reporting side. In call history though, we can see the entire call. If we throw in the session ID, I have my ID already ready to go. I forget when this call was from, so we're just gonna go back. Current in previous 2 months, the results, and then here is my sequence. So this here, I'm showing 20 events. So each row of data is an event. Combined, they make a sequence, or we can call it a contact. So if I was to simply export this into a report, throw in the call stats of contact versus event count, I will turn off Cradle to Grave, keep things simple, turn off details. And this will give me one contact and one contact, like that. So it gives me one contact and 20 events. So again, contact is the entire call, or is also, I've seen in Cisco's documentation that a caller is also referred to as a contact. A contact is one contact and then every single event. And so we have the different statistics. Close this guy out. Go back to here. You'll see when you're selecting and going through the different the grouping statistics, the search set statistics, or even the cradle to grave statistics, you're going to see a lot of different contact data types and also a lot of events. So when we came up with the names for these different data types, it was important that we identify what they're looking at. So like here, event count, event duration, average event duration, max event duration. It's taking those individual rows of data and looking at them, individually. We're not combining. I mean, we are combining them in the counts, but like we're not looking at the overall contact. And so this is looking at the what's called the activity data or the event data. So we're looking at the individual events. When we see contact, it's not combining the events into like one giant record. Webex has a separate set of records that are the contact records. And so they don't always line up. Like your contact duration will not always add up to be your event duration, and there's many reasons for that, and that's completely by design. So yeah, when you're in here, looking at the statistics, just understand that when you're looking at, like, when you're trying to answer, hey, how many calls came into my call center, how many calls came into my queue, or how many calls were presented to my team. When you want a call to be just a call, like a call sequence, like we see with Call Manager, look for the data types that include the word contact, and that's where you see, the entire number, or the number of unique sequences, your total duration, what your hold time, because each contact record will have its own unique hold time. So, like for example, John's the agent. I'm the caller. I call in. I speak with John. John puts me on hold. He puts me on hold for, say, 30 seconds. He comes back. We resume the call, and then he puts me on hold a second time for another 15 seconds. Looking at the event data, we can see each of those hold times. We can see the 30 second and the 15 as we look at the detail. When you're looking at the contact record, the hold time is just going to be 45 seconds. It doesn't necessarily break the hold time at the contact or the call level, up to or out into the individual instances of when the caller is put on hold. So there's different points of view. So I guess that's the question. It becomes, when do I use what, or when do I use contacts versus events? And it really comes down to what you're looking at, right, reporting on. Contact, I think, will lean more towards the contact side when you're looking at just overall calls. So like contact count, contact duration, and those will be super important to the user, especially when if you're reporting on calls at the queue level. And a lot of this I'm just kind of basing on what I've seen with our UCCX customers, where we have the question they'll ask us, well, how many calls came into my contact center? And from there, contact count. What was our total duration? From the caller's point of view, how long did they spend? Not just queue time, or not just talking to the agent, but how long did they spend in the IVR? How long, from start to finish, how long did they spend coming into the contact center, navigating different menus, going to, being queued, talking to an agent? Maybe they were transferred, they were put on hold. This is the customer's journey from start to finish. And I've heard that phrase thrown around, or your customer's journey, from a few of our early access users, where you're looking at the customer journey. Contact is the customer journey. Average contact duration. That's on average. How long are they spending in contact center? So these are really great metrics when you're looking for the customer or the caller's point of view when they're calling in. The events can tell a different story, or can be used to tell different stories. Let me change this to ascending. So this is my call record right here. This is a test call I placed into myself. And so the important, when you're looking at the events, one of the most important fields, and I would say probably the most important field when you're trying to understand what the heck is going on, is the event name. Each event, they all kind of look the same, but what can tell you when you're trying to like tell the story or read or understand, how the caller, went through the contact center, the event name will tell you exactly what they did. And so you'll see here, I've got contact duration selected. I also have the event duration here too. So you can see the contact duration is the entire duration of the call, start to finish. So in theory, all these events should add up to equal about 24 seconds. Each event, so they all share the same contact duration because they're all part of the same contact. The event duration is telling you how long each step took. So for most sequences, or for most calls, the first event we get is the new event, which just tells us, hey, this is a new call. And a lot of these, the reason why the counts were like 103 versus 1,050 something is because so many of these events are just like zero duration records. Think of it like if you're just turning on or off a light switch. You flip the light switch, light bulb comes on, flip the light switch, light bulb turns off. It's not just simply on or off. It's also telling you the switch was flipped. So and a lot of those are just really quick. They're instant. There's zero duration records. So here, new record, you're hitting the flow or think Contact Center Express, the script. Then we see them connected to the IVR. They're there for 4 seconds. The IVR is done. So we get a lot of these too, where it's just it's something and then the word done. It just tells us they left the IVR, and they're always little zero duration records, just telling us when they left. So they hit the IVR, and then they're queued. So this is the call being associated or assigned to the queue. This is not the actual queue time. So we can see it's a zero duration record, but this is also the first record where we see the support queue or the queue name in the data. So this is where the queue then joins the call. Connect is ringing. This is when it's trying to connect to an agent. Now you can see that I've joined the sequence. So now we've got queue, and agent. So now it's ringing. It's a zero duration call. So I must have been either available or I went available really quickly and then went not ready with it, super fast enough to generate, a zero duration event. And then we get the unknown, flow activity, and then parked. In this case, when you see parked with a queue name, this is queue time. So we see park as in queue time. So the call came in, was assigned to the queue. It rang for maybe a split second and then was parked for 4 seconds. And then we get a second connect record where then it's presented to me. Unknown again, I probably went not ready. Flow activity parked a second time for 13 seconds. Flow, and then the call ends. So this is where I hung up. So if I add, let's say ring, so I can add ring time in seconds, add ring time in contact ring time as well. We're going to see, let me pull this up here. So we're going to see, this is the one where it wasn't working. Okay, this one wasn't doing, this was an earlier build where it wasn't working. What you will see in the GA release, the contact ring time is going to be the sum, or the contact ring time is the total ring time for this contact. So it's going to be the 4 seconds down up right here, and then the 13 seconds up here, or 17 seconds total, you'll see in every record, much like we have with the contact duration. The ring time in seconds will only be applied at the event level to the events where it's ringing. So you'll see parked is 4 seconds, and then park is 13 seconds. So like I said earlier, the contact ring time is always going to be the total for the entire call. You don't really get multiple contacts per call because the contact is the call. But for the events, like in this case where the call rang, or the call was parked twice, or the call was queued twice. I'm sorry, you know what? I was saying parked. I meant connect. I was still caught up with the queue. Let me take a step back. Contact ring time, I was right. The ring time here, you're going to see it twice. You'll see the connect ring time here with 0 seconds, which is correct. And then you'll see the second connect time here, which is also 0 seconds, which also may be why it's correct. Let me switch this out. I change this for this. Let me get rid of these two, because what I meant to look at was probably queue time. Much better. This is where the park was. Okay. So your contact queue time, again, comes from that contact record, which is 18 seconds. So we've got, the combination of this parked event here and this parked event here. At the events, it's 17 seconds. There probably is some rounding. So we're getting 18 seconds for the total queue time. These ones should be populated, but they're not, because that's, again, it's an earlier build. But yeah, so going back to what I was saying, because we're getting multiple like queue time events, when you're looking at the individual event records, you can break them out into separate, separate instances. Or like if someone, going back to my earlier example with John, if John puts me on hold 3, 4, 5, 10 times, the whole time for the contact at the contact level is just gonna be one lump sum. But if you want to break it out into the individual, hold times, like for example, if I'm put on hold for a minute, the entire for the average hold time for that call is 1 minute. But if I'm put on hold 5 times in a minute, my average time, the actual true average time will be much different, actually much lower. So by filtering and playing around with the way, which events we're pulling out of the database, you can really get into the data and break it down. Whereas with the contact data, everything is at a much higher level where we're summarizing, the entire call. So when you want to really get into the calls, that's where we lean on that queue data. So kind of what I can show, and I put this together like last night is a quick example. This was my call. So you can see, here's my event. I get a new event, the flow, IVR, queued, park, connect, park, and the call ends. So we have all these different events that make up the entire sequence. But when you're looking at the contact, it is everything all in once combined. So this is kind of a visual representation of the difference between the two, where you have all those events equal one contact, and that's because we're getting the separate separate data sets in Webex's data. And so my second call, a little bit different and a little more normal, because I don't know what I was doing when I placed that test call. So this one has 23 records, and actually this is not my test call. This is Maria's test call. But what we're seeing here is something similar. Again, we're relying on these events. So we see the call is new, flow, and then we get where the IVR is connected, call is queued, and then when the call is, and so Maria was available because the caller wasn't parked. So again, we always get that 0-second queued event, and that just means the call was, given to the queue. Then we see connect. So we see the call rang. So I can probably include, let me try ring time again. Might as well, since it worked so well last time. Try again, and then we got ring time. So we got ring time here. So we have 30 seconds of total ring time for the call, 18 seconds of ring time for this one event. So we can see the connect event is 18 seconds. There's Maria. Again, we can see where the call where the queue is then, first becomes involved in the sequence at the queued record or the queued events, connect. And then we get this, connected to agent error. Connected to agent error is simply Maria didn't answer. So she's probably testing out like a ring no answer scenario. And this is what we get. So instead of like Webex saying, oh, hey, it's a ring no answer, they kind of treat it as an error. And we get this. So this is just saying, Maria didn't answer. In the web GUI for the agent, it puts up an error message on the screen saying, do you wish to go? I think it's like, what do you do? Do you go ready, or do you want to go not ready or ready? And so Maria was, she got the message, and then flow, and the call's parked. So she doesn't answer, call's parked. We see again more queue time, and then Maria goes ready again, or she's available again. It goes connect. So it's trying to ring again. So again, we have 12 seconds here, 18 seconds here, which equals the 30 seconds of contact time here. And then we get the recording started because Maria answered, and then we get the connected event. So this is Maria's answering. So now we can get, not talking, but the talk time. Which we can also probably throw in for fun, handle time. Okay, save some records here. And so so the record, the call's connected, and she talks for 43 seconds of talking time, which is roughly 39 to 46 seconds. And then she's connected on hold. She puts the caller on hold. And then the event is 3 seconds here for hold time. Hold done. Again, we can see, when she ends the hold, pause, resumed, and then ended. So this, if I go back to my little handy dandy chart here, looking at Maria's call, the contact includes everything from new, through the IVR, through the queue, the connect event, the ring no answer, park, connect, on hold, up until the end. When you see the end, or ended, I should say, this is when the contact ends the call, or when the contact is no longer part of the contact center. Call's over, person hung up, someone hung up, hopefully the person calling in has been helped, and then they're all set. What is not part of the contact duration is the wrap-up time. So once the call ends, then Maria has her wrap-up time, which lasts for 3 seconds. You can pick your wrap-up code, do whatever. Through testing, I found that if you forget to pick up your wrap-up code, it may just sit there forever or for a couple hours, and that really throws off some of your stats. But these are all just what we see after the call ends. So going back to what I kind of mentioned earlier, your contact duration and your event, the sum of your event durations are not always going to be the same, especially when you get to wrap up time. And we've had that, add that to the calculations and make sure it's correct, because, your contact duration does not include, these 3 seconds here. So if you were to add all these up, you would probably get about 1:22. This total here would be roughly about 1:25, given, for rounding, just the way it rounds. But on the plus side, we do get the wrap up. We do get the wrap up completed, and we do get, great information on the wrap up code selected. So yeah, definitely kind of running out of time here, but when you're picking or selecting your statistics, it's just important to look at, the name of the stats. If it says contact, it's looking at the entire call. It will not include, or your contact duration does not include wrap up time. However, there is there's not, I thought there was. There is the basic wrap up time, which is your, all the way down here. Here's your wrap up time in seconds. So yeah, so when picking your statistics, it's important to look at the difference between, or in the name of the field. So contact is looking at the entire session, or think of it, if you're familiar with call manager data or call manager reporting, or our Webex reporting as well. It's looking at the sequence. So it's looking at the call as a whole, and then your events are really leaning on, these individual rows where, when we're getting into building out more complicated reports and more complicated searches, your event's name is going to come in handy. Like if you want to report on just hold time, you can do on hold. Or if you want to only include, connected and on hold, you can do that. And so we have a great list. We have the list of all the different events. And it's really, you can pick and choose what you want to report on. And so instead of just relying on the contact for the entire call, if you want to get into the different call scenarios or different events that happen within a sequence, this is, by filtering on the events and by using the different events durations or just the total event duration, you can really get, dig into that data and pull out just what you're looking for. So take a deep breath. I think we're done. I think I'm done talking for a little bit. Yeah, John, I think we're kind of covered it. It's a high, not too high, not too down in the weeds level. I will punt it back to you for any questions or.
Yeah, well, we haven't had any questions come in, but boy, am I excited for the upcoming webinars on building this stuff into dashboards and reports, because if people believe more is better, there is more here. It's just, it's pretty amazing. I can't wait to see this working on customer sites.